midst of the congestion and development so familiar to the northeastern U.S., there lies an oasis. One can sense a change traveling down New Jersey's western coast along the lower Delaware, where it enters the bay, into Salem, Cumberland, and western Cape May counties. Connected to the area is a culture that might seem very familiar because it is part of our history, but compared to the world around us, this culture seems out of another time. It is a world of small communities and open spaces, where the remnants of generations who come before stand preserved, where people depend on work closely tied to the land and the water, and carry on the legacy of their forebears. The schooner A.J. Meerwald has been restored to sail by a local group dedicated to raising people's awareness about this bayshore area. The Meerwald reflects the connection to the natural resources, to a maritime tradition, and to a folk culture that cherishes its heritage. The schooner also represents a time when the plentiful oyster harvest helped other local industries thrive, like boat building.
There has been a shipyard here in Dorchester for over 150 years. My father worked at the old Leesburg shipyard about 3 miles south of here as a ship carpenter in the wintertime, and then went up the bay and caught oysters in the spring. And so when the oyster business went bad in the 50s and there wasn't any oysters to catch in the bay, they called him up here and asked him if he wanted to come to work up here.
The small towns along the bayshore are filled with people who take on the work of those who came before them. What keeps tradition strong here is a reliance on the natural elements, the land and its relationship to the water. It was the land and the water that brought Native Americans to these rivers near the bay in the first place. European colonists sought the same bounty in the 17th century. The rivers would serve as excellent transportation routes, and the landscape would provide a perfect home for permanent communities.
See here is that the way in which they're laid out in this diaper work, and the question is, where does this come from?
Right.
And folks have kicked it around a lot, and some folks have argued for continental origins and other for regional British tradition. What you see as you look at this area is all the evidence for the full array of national and ethnic building traditions that inform the landscapes that we see today. Within the compass of a few short miles, as you will see the earliest surviving durable architecture in the region. One of the most distinctive elements in the landscapes of South Jersey are the brick houses with patterned ends, largely associated with the early Quaker settlements. These patterned ends are made out of glazed brick, which are laid up in geometric devices such as diamonds or inverted triangles, and they typically bear either dates or initials or both. What they really represent is sort of this sense of permanence and durability. There are no landscapes which possess a greater richness of early buildings, ranging from the very first settlements on through the 19th century. For example, you will find down in the area around present-day Greenwich surviving frame buildings, which reflect the earliest New England building traditions as both Baptists and Quakers relocate into this area. And then there are the more complex patterns associated with the tidewater reaches of the mid-Atlantic. And just as folks in the very early colonial periods were quick to make their stamp on the landscape with the large pattern-ended houses, they did so again in the mid-1800s with these fashionable new country estates. The mix of architectural traditions really speaks to the diversity of the populations of South Jersey. Each has left their mark in the landscape, a landscape which is defined from its earliest European settlements by tolerance and toleration. There are a few other landscapes where you will find quite the mix of religious institutions at such an early date.
Three black settlements were self-contained. They usually had their own schools, their own stores, and because basically laws of the land, they could not commingle anyway, so they were self-contained. Some of the earliest that can be recalled is Springtown, the Goultown area, and Othello. Historically, African Americans migrated here from the south, and most of them came in during farming time, and they worked agriculturally in the fields during different seasons. And then they also came into this area and started working in the fishing industry, shucking oysters. They were laborers. They did most of the hard work.
There are natural wonders here, too. This small portion of Bayshore serves as a crossroads for migratory birds, as well as a world-renowned birthplace for the ancient horseshoe crab.
The Delaware Bay shore is world famous for its concentration of shorebirds that have flown here nonstop from southern South America, arrive here on the beaches because there's just a glut of food for them.
No less important to the ecosystem are the area's highly productive salt marshes that play a key role in the life of the entire bay.
The marsh, because it warms up quickly in the spring, because it has lots of shallow waters where small fish are protected from their major predators, which are big fish, makes a perfect nursery area for little fish. They grow rapidly so that when they go back out in the fall, they're bigger and they're better able to survive, and they're more quickly available to get into the fishery. The Jersey wetlands, particularly along the Delaware Bay, were diked very early in the period of European settlement. Some of them were diked for salt hay, some of them were diked for growing vegetables, some of them were diked just to encourage waterfowl production for hunting and trapping.
Some natural resources have not survived the toll of human influence. The community of Bayside was once called Caviar, when the bountiful sturgeon harvest here supplied the world's caviar market.
Really, it was called the caviar capital of the world. There was a restaurant there, the telegraph office, post office, and of course a lot of fishing shanties to take care of the transit fishermen. I feel a little bit sad because I remember what it used to be like and what it is now. And when you see something like that disappear in your lifetime, it gives you a feeling of sadness.
The economies of the area rise and fall with the health of the natural resources. Changes in the resources require adaptations to tradition. A town like Port Norris is a perfect example. Plentiful oysters made Port Norris a boom town, but when the harvest deteriorated, the industry practically disappeared. 100 years after the boom, the harvest pales in comparison to its former glory. Over time, many oystermen adapted by going into commercial crabbing, while other local entrepreneurs began guiding recreational crabbers. Many traditional harvests, like railbird hunting, are now either folk hobbies or tourist industries, where the experts of old are the new guides.
I've been carving duck decoys for about 35 years. I used to make them to hunt with, and then it's changed a lot since then. Now you sell a single decoy to people and they want it signed and become an art form. There are different traditions of carving, especially in New Jersey. There's the Delaware River style carving and there's the Barnegat Bay style carving. So there's a contemporary carving style where we've made the birds bigger, made the birds so they float better, and it makes a lot of difference if you're going to hunt with them.
Since the earliest European settlement, farmers have diked meadows to grow salt hay, a harvest that has practically disappeared. The business of agriculture has changed the crop choices and the farming methods over the last 300 years. New crops like sod fill the niche, grown on the land once used for other commercial crops. But the strength of the area still lies in traditional products, vegetables and fruit.
This farm has been in the family since the late 1890s. My great-grandfather purchased this farm. He was the first one to grow vegetables here in this area. Since then, we've graduated from being a 12-horse farm to about 1,000 acres of vegetables, mechanized farm. We sort of have a microclimate here in that the bay is a buffer to us. A bay breeze off of the water would tend to keep us warmer in the fall and keep us cooler in the afternoon in the summertime also.
This whole South Jersey area has been well known for agriculture, both in vegetables and fruit, and specifically this land, this 500 acres that we're growing fruit on, is now second generation in our family, but it was a fruit farm for 3 generations before we came here.
The natural resources of the area help build another industry that remains strong today, glass. The industry was born in Salem County. Caspar Wister, a German immigrant and Quaker, founded the first successful glass factory in America in 1739. 2 resources in particular drew the glassmakers: timber for heating the raw material and a great abundance of sand.
There's a really large tradition in southern New Jersey of paperweight tradition, making handmade paperweights, which originally were kind of an end-of-the-day piece where the factory workers made for themselves, for gifts for their family and that sort of thing. And the work that I'm doing now is actually based on a paperweight, although it's made into a more of a plate or bowl forms, but the center and core of it is actually a traditional paperweight. Glassblowing we do is very traditional in technique and tools, and the methods used probably haven't changed in the last 1,000 years. The product has changed a lot and the aesthetic has changed, but technically what we do and how we do it is very similar to the first days of blowing glass.
So many times people will ask me, you know, you were born and raised here in South Jersey, Pat, and how can you keep on going to the same area as a painter or a photographer? It is so beautiful. There's a magic spirit to South Jersey or the wetlands around Cumberland County, the Delaware Bay area. You can just stand in one of these fields or sit along the marsh, and you just know that it's just teeming with all kinds of life. Look at the textures, the beauty of it all, the clouds, the stillness of the water, sometimes the roughness of the water. It just serves, to me, constantly as inspiration.
But it's a landscape that is defined neither by human dominion or natural phenomena that can't be overcome. Folks have both shaped the landscape and been shaped by it over the more than 3 centuries that they've lived here.
The National Park Service and the state of New Jersey invite you to explore the Delsea region of the New Jersey Coastal Heritage Trail Route and discover for yourselves the many natural and cultural resources that make this portion of southern New Jersey special.